One of the biggest decisions you'll make is where to live. It's not as easy as picking a place or putting your house on the market. You need an expert every step of the way. Here you can expect good advice beyond real estate. This is good advice for your life. This is Good to Know with Liz Goodchild. Here's your host, Liz Goodchild.
Magandang Sabado. It's a beautiful Saturday. Well, is it beautiful Saturday? It's kind of chilly, right?
It's cooled off. But
it's cooled off, and you are not hearing Carrie Perkins' voice because our Carrie Perkins is like wandering around, traveling with her husband in Alabama. I think she's in Tennessee. She's like doing a road trip is what she's doing. So, of course, who do I ask when I need help to co-host? No other than our partner here, supporter, Michael Dreletars from Precise Fleet Tracking Solution. And thank you. Thank you for helping me out.
Thanks for having me, Liz. I appreciate being here.
Yes, and it's starting to be a scary time,
it is. Right? It is the fall. It is Halloween is approaching.
Even now, we just started the morning. Very scary. So, because Halloween is here, I think, are you guys like kind of feeling that spooky feeling? So, well, I thought I had Halloween is fast approaching, and I thought the best way to get the scary celebration started is by just telling scary stories. Well, we're not going to be around a campfire. We're going to be around microphones. So a bunch of microphones. And who do you think has the most scariest stories in the business?
Well, somebody I can think of is a home inspector.
That's right.
They're going to have lots of scary stories.
That's right. So, of course, we got to bring in Rick Carlberg, the house doctor, because scary stories, by the way, the Tagalog word for scary is nakakatakot. Can you say that? Nakakatakot.
Okay.
How about you, Rick? Nakakatakot?
Nakakatakot.
Yes, nakakatakot. So welcome back, Rick. And
Thank you.
Thought, okay, let's talk about some spooky stories. And here's one that I have, okay? And I'm gonna be a little dramatic in the way I say this. So there was an inspector who won the spooky story content, in California, and he was an inspector. And this was the story that won the first place prize. It's called The Missing Man with an Axe. Okay, so this inspector, I guess, was asked to inspect a home as a favor. You get one of those favor to some relatives, Rick?
Sounds familiar.
So he soon discovered something interesting about the previous tenants. The son has tried to murder his parents with an axe, burned the house to the ground, and then he died by suicide, Then he was missing. So the home inspector got to the home on a cold, windy afternoon. Well, just like the movie, the fog started rolling in. Then he approached the house, and he noticed pieces of yellow crime scene tape still left behind. As he entered the home to the howling wind coming through the gaps in the windows, he pondered his next move. Should he lock the door to prevent the murderous son from entering and catching him off guard? But wait, what if he was already inside the home? If he locked the door, it would delay his escape from his hatchet-wielding warpath. So he decided to take the chances and lock the door. So the first thing he noticed in the house were the hatchet cuts. They continued throughout the house on the walls, the cabinets, and even the support posts. The walls of the bathroom were smeared in a dried brown substance, which turned out to be blood. There was dried blood in the kitchen and blood stains on the carpet. He went downstairs, but there was no power. As he reached the bottom of the stairs, he pointed his flashlight towards the den, where there was a hole in the floor from a fire that the son had tried to start. The hair on the back of his neck raised up. Out of his corner of his eye, he saw an open door. Swiftly, he turned around and aimed the flashlight into the pitch black room, expecting to be charged with an axe. Well, luckily that didn't happen. The son never turned up. But honestly, by the end of the inspection, His nerves were shot to think that this was an unpaid favor for a relative. Okay, top that one, Rick.
That's a great story. And I've been in situations like that where you're in the house maybe by yourself and your mind starts to wander a bit and you hear, maybe a creak or the furnace kicks on and there's some strange noises and, you wonder. And I've been there, in his train of thought, do I lock the door to keep somebody from coming in or do I leave it unlocked so I can get out? So you kind of go back and forth.
So you talk to yourself just like this.
You do, and you start to get unreasonable, when you start hearing things. But yes, I've been there for sure.
Oh, wow. But, don't you have, though, the buyers always with you?
Not always. I mean, there's times where, buyers may not attend. And so there's times where I just get the lockbox code and we go in and we're there by ourselves sometimes. So, there are times where we are there alone. Yes.
So, for the Good Child team, we don't do that.
No.
Right. So, and the reason why, guys, is because for me, risk, liability, right? I know that, you're going to be doing a thorough job, comprehensive job, but at the end of the day, I don't want all the blame on you. You know what I mean? I wanted to make sure that there's somebody representing the buyer, right?
Yes.
To be there. I don't care if it's a friend. I don't care if it's, whoever. But I want two other eyeballs on, what's happening so that, I don't want it to be like, well, Rick said,
Yes.
So, and we do also attend those home inspections too, because, I love the fact when you do the summary towards the end.
Yes.
Things like that. But so you do have these horror stories like this too?
I do. And I will tell you that 80% of the time there is somebody there, whether it's the agent and buyer, one or the other, or the seller, maybe 90% of the time. But there are times where there's not. Maybe the buyer is an out-of-town buyer, and maybe it's a for sale by owner. There's different situations. So, yes, there are times where we're there by ourselves. Yes. Yep.
Well, Michael, do you have a horror story in your business like that, similar?
We do. Fortunately, they don't happen very frequently.
Thank God.
But in our GPS tracking world, we do track vehicles, and we get to know what drivers are doing. And in fact, this past weekend, I should say last Saturday morning, I got a call from an owner. There was an accident with one of his trucks, and he has video dash cams in his trucks, fortunately, and he wanted to know what actually happened. The driver told one story to the police after the accident. The video that we were able to acquire showed something completely different. This gentleman was driving a semi-tanker truck with fuel tanker truck.
Oh, no.
And at 42 miles an hour, he plowed into the back of another vehicle.
Oh, no.
And it's a four vehicle pileup at 4:30 in the morning. Fortunately, nobody was injured, and the truck didn't explode.
Wow.
But the risk is extremely high.
That was very scary.
And so the owner felt very comfortable that our video helped prove what actually happened. Mm-hmm. Now, again, his driver was in the fault, and he knew that, but he knows exactly what happened, and he can deal with that separately when you have the facts.
Yes.
And it's all about having the facts and the details and not just going off of emotion or off of suspicion.
Right.
But having the facts and the data is very critical. So we do get those scary stories sometimes, but it's we provide our value in providing the owners with the knowledge of what really happened.
And that's what Rick does.
Absolutely.
Rick actually, he's there to get the data.
And that's perfect. We provide the knowledge so that the people have the power. The buyers, the playing field gets leveled because they have that knowledge and they know what's going on. They're not going into it blindly. They're going to know what's wrong, what systems might be nearing the end of their life, what things they need to be ready for. So we try to provide value to them by arming them with that knowledge.
Right. That's right.
Yes.
And also what I love about your service is that we don't have to wait for that report. We actually, we get it within 24 hours, but we talk through it in person. And if there's any, any reasons that you got to point something out, you're still in the house.
Right. We always go through a summary at the end, just so if the buyer has questions or wants to see something before we leave the house, we have time to do that. So that's part of it. I mean, it's important that the buyer attends, and it's important that when we go through the summary, that's their time. So it's their time to ask questions, their time to get educated. And, being a homeowner, you need to know basic maintenance. So we try to do that as well.
Sure, certainly valuable.
Yeah.
And we're gonna have that in the show today. So yes, we're gonna be talking about very, very scary stories, nakakatakot. Starting the celebration of Halloween, and then we're gonna talk about actually, what our listeners should really, who are homeowners, should really keep in mind during the season, so that their houses doesn't become one of those horror houses, right?
Absolutely.
So if we miss all of these, Michael, where should we go?
So for podcast information and more, go to thegoodchildteam.com/good-to-know. And we are airing now at 1 p.m. and we re-air at 5 p.m. every Saturday here on AM 1160, Hope for Your Life.
Yes. And again, Michael, I can't thank you enough for supporting our show.
Not a problem.
We also have
a few other sponsors as well.
Okay.
So we'll run through that real quick. We got Mike Nielsen from Proper Rate, Joe Agnello from Nauman Agnello and Associates,
Dave Thompson from Home State Bank,
from
right?
Home State Bank,
Yes.
Brett Rickenoff from Country Financial,
Yes.
and Kasper Trivedi of Trivedi Con and Attorneys at Law, as well as myself, Michael Drellichars from Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions.
Yes. And again, this show wouldn't be here without your support. Thank you so much.
Glad to be here.
Yes, and so we have here Rick Carlberg from the House Doctor. And where can they reach you, Rick?
They can reach us at 847-309-3000. Again, 847-309-3000, or on the web at www.housedoctorsinc.com.
And stay tuned, because we have more scary stories coming your way. Woo!
You don't need to make major decisions alone. Here you can expect good advice. You're tuned into Good to Know with Liz Goodchild on AM 1160.
We are back, and this is Liz Goodchild, and we are going to hopefully scare you. And with stories that are nakakatakot, really scary. So, okay, tell us more stories. We're doing this, pretend we are in a campfire, and it's very, very dark. And Rick Carlberg from the House Doctor is telling us all the horror stories that he's seen. How many years?
It'll be 23 in November.
22
awesome.
decades.
Yeah,
2 decades. And the whole time I know you too.
Yeah.
So-
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes. Go ahead. So what other horror stories do you have?
Well, there's always scary things that we see on inspections, health and safety stuff and, mold and things like that. And, I can't show you things here on the radio, but if you go to our Facebook page, House Doctor's Facebook page, there are some photos there from a job from last week that was just covered with mold. There's some really interesting photos there if you'd want to take a look at that at the House Doctor's Facebook page. It was about a week ago. They're easy to find, and you'll see it's a pretty scary situation. And the scariest part about it was that there were people living in this house at the same time. The photos that you'll see were taken in the basement, but there were people living upstairs, so it was pretty scary.
Wow.
It's dangerous.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow. Well, I did look at your website, and then I saw, Michael, they in the attic, surrounded by what is that? The the roof. What do you call that?
The insulation?
Insulation. There's a light bulb.
Oh, yes, right up against the insulation. And the funny part about that one, and you'll see that on the website as well, is that bulb was controlled by a switch in the hallway. So if somebody's walking through the house and they flip the switch and they say, "What does this do?" and they leave it on, that bulb is going to catch the insulation on fire.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. It's a really easy fix. You just got to move the insulation. But, it's little things like that are scary. And small problems, can certainly become bigger problems. Yes.
So what was that story about the raw sewage situation we saw, Michael?
Yeah, so there was a home inspector. This was in California, I believe. But there's a home inspector that was inspecting a fourplex last year, and he noticed a foul odor. The units were rentals, and he assumed the smell was from the former tenant's mess. It intensified in the lower units, and when he reached the crawl space, shimmying under the house, he realized all the drain lines had been emptying into the crawl space and were disconnected from the city sewer. What a mess. The crawl was literally filled with raw sewage. He got out fast and let that investment buyer know that he had a big problem on his hands.
I've seen it.
Have you seen that?
I've seen it. Yep.
Yeah.
We had a house, actually, this has been a while, so this is probably 5-6 years ago, but there was a house in the city of Chicago on the west side, and it was the exact same situation where, we open up the crawl space and just realized that all the plumbing from the drains in the house were disconnected from the main sewer line. Yeah, and everything, like you said, was dumping right into the crawl, literally right into the crawl space,
Yeah.
and that it was nasty.
That is terrible.
That's terrible. And some people, they just don't know because they don't go down there, right? I mean, you smell something, you're like, where's it coming from? I don't know. And it's something that could be going on for a long time before you discover where it's coming from.
I looked at purchasing a house years ago that had some standing water in the basement, and it turned out that there was mold everywhere, even inside the conduit.
Oh, jeez.
So it turned out I did not purchase that home under advice, and the reality is that house had to be completely gutted,
Yes.
not just to the studs, but all of the wiring, the electrical boxes. I mean, it was a major ordeal.
Yeah.
So it can be really scary if it's left unattended and unnoticed. So your service is really of value to an investor, someone buying a home for their personal use or for an investment. You need to know what you're buying, and not every seller is fully aware of what's going on.
Absolutely. And I will tell you that when people call to make an appointment, one of our questions is, do you have any concerns? And there's so many times where people will say, nope, looks great, just redone, new carpet, new paint, and we go in and, like you said, we go into the attic or the crawl space or take the cover off the electric panel. I mean, obviously things that you wouldn't do as a buyer walking through a house.
Of course.
And you start digging a little deeper, and then that's where the scary stuff is,
Right.
Yeah.
Lipstick on a pig, right?
Yes, a lot of times, yes.
Yeah.
So, speaking of crawl space, what about the crawl space creature story?
So crawl spaces tend to be the least favorite area for inspectors, for good reason.
Why is that?
A home inspector was nearly done with an inspection last year when he entered a crawl space. He put his hands under the plastic vapor barrier for balance, and something moved. A lot. Within seconds, a full-grown possum shot out from under the plastic, running from the far corner of the space, hissing at the home inspector. Holman made a hasty retreat back to the entrance. Needless to say, he didn't go under the house. But that kind of stuff, those unexpected guests, can be really alarming, especially when you don't anticipate it. One thing if you're looking for it, but if you don't anticipate it.
Right. I had a house in, it was again in probably the northern suburbs, but it was an old house, and the crawl space entrance was on the outside, and it had those kind of Grandpa Munster double doors that you would have to open to walk down. So I reached down to grab the handle on the door, and I lift it up, and this snake slithers out, and I said, "No access, did not inspect," and I went on my way. But I have in the attic seen raccoons up there and squirrels and wildlife and stuff like that. So in the wintertime it gets cold and they want to get inside, and they're creative and they'll find ways to get in. And it's hard to get rid of them once they do.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, the next scary story. I've never heard of such a thing. Michael, that unexpected guest.
Yeah. So another home inspector was inspecting a crawl space, which was over 4 feet high. When he turned the corner, he ran right into a living space. Someone had been living in a tent in the home's crawl space. The person had even disconnected a heat duct so that they could receive warmth in the cold winter months. The home backed up to a greenbelt, so I suppose the person accessed the home by way of the greenbelt without even being seen. They snuck in and...
Okay, I don't think that's going to be possible here in Chicago, right?
Yeah, I was just going to say I've seen a lot of things, but I have not seen that yet. So yeah, that's an interesting story. I think that would startle me a bit.
Well, for me, I mean, the last story that we had, or this just happened about 6 weeks ago. about 2 months ago, wherein we have a vacant house, quite luxurious. It's over $1 million, and one of my people were going to show the house, and then he called me up and says, "Liz, I thought this is vacant." I go, "Yeah, it is vacant." "It's not." I go, "What do you mean it's not? You mean somebody showing the house?" "No, somebody lives here."
Yeah.
And I go, "No way." And people broke into the house, took my sign down, put no trespassing sign, and
Bold.
yes, very bold, and then occupied the house, moved in 7 mattresses. This is a huge home, and 7 mattresses, and it was trespassing, So we called the police, got them out. The people were having 6 children with them, and just trying to squatter the place.
Yeah.
So that's scary.
Yeah.
And it probably caused some damage as well, I would imagine.
Well, not yet, because it's only been 3 days.
I was only 3. Oh, wow, that's quick.
Yeah, this is quick. We just did an open house like Sunday, and they moved in by Wednesday.
Wow, okay.
Yes, so kind of very similar, but very scary. I mean, our business is really scary. But what other scary things have you seen, Rick?
Well, scary things like environmental problems, like, again, mold. Please, if you have a minute, just go to the Facebook page. There's some great pictures there. So things like that. Piles of asbestos laying on basement floors. I mean, that's scary. Anything like that would be a health and safety issue. So, yeah, things more like that.
How about things like unseen, like radon? I mean, that's an invisible
Well,
problem,
you got to give a plug to your wife then.
Yes, I do.
Right now.
She's the radon lady, Paulina, my wife. And so, yeah, we do a lot of radon testing. And you're right. Radon is odorless and colorless, and you don't know what your levels are unless you test your levels. And there's radon in everybody's house. We've never tested a house that came in at 0.0. So you have some levels of radon. So we just test to make sure that they're safe level. Yeah, but it is scary because it's a cancer causer and it kills 22,000 people a year. So
It's the number 2 leading cause of cancer.
Is that right?
Yes.
of lung cancer after
Yes.
smoking. It's number 1 in non-smokers.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a scary thought as well. But yeah.
Yeah.
I don't hear much about that, as much as we probably as we should.
And that's the thing. I mean, people, that owns a basement, even you're not selling your house, you should test for radon.
Right.
So call Paulina on that one.
Yeah, we do concerned homeowner tests, we call them. So there's not necessarily a transaction, but there's people who are concerned. Maybe their neighbor just had a test done and theirs came in high. So we do that as well.
And we tested our home before we bought it for radon, because it was a crawl space.
Yes.
Part of the house.
Yep.
Good.
So you don't like going into crawl space, but you do. So most inspectors do that. Most inspectors also have to have a lot of knowledge, in like coming up with this like really scary circumstances. The next segment, we really want to know, what does it take to become a home inspector? So stay tuned. If they're missing all this, Michael, where should they go?
Sure. For podcast information and more and past recordings, go to thegoodchildteam.com/good-to-know. That's thegoodchildteam.com/good-to-know. You'll receive all the past information, list of our sponsors, and all sorts of good-to-know information from Liz here.
Yes, thank you. And so one more time on where they can reach you.
You can reach us at 847-309-3000. Again, 847-309-3000, or on the web at www.housedoctorsinc.com.
For more really scary stories, nakakatakot, stay tuned because we have more things to come, more scary stories. And stay tuned because we're going to go over what it will take to become a home inspector.
You're listening to Good to Know with Liz Goodchild on AM 1160, a show that brings you hope, help, and a team of experts to help you. Here's Liz Goodchild.
All right, it's our scary stories that we're talking about here, and there's more, right? So it's like, for instance, have you ever had stinky surprises? Like, I heard about this, one inspection in New York, worst experience of its life. On the walls of the kitchen it's mold, but the bedroom carpet was riddled with dog feces. So did you have something like that wherein the smell is just so horrible? that what do you do?
You become nose blind after a while. I mean, you just go in and you got to do your job. So we're there, typically on a house we're there a couple hours. So there's been houses like that for sure, over the last 20 years. And you just got to go in and do what you need to do.
Sort of build up a tolerance, I would imagine your body does, right? Sad.
Yeah, you do. But it certainly happens, yes.
So you have to be sure to go into crawl space, and you can't have your smell to be a home inspector. It sounds like it. Is that true? So no smell and 4 feet tall. Okay, so what does it take to become a home inspector?
It's in Illinois you have to be licensed first off. So we're a licensed state. So I think there's 35 out of the 50 states that require licensing. So licensing is mandatory here. We are all certified at House Doctors. So when I started in 1999, there was no licensing. It started, I think, in 2003 in Illinois. So we became certified because that was the only credential really back then. So we are still certified because in Illinois, you're required to do 6 hours of continuing education per year for your licensing, whereas to be certified, you do 20 a year. So if you're licensed and certified, you're doing 26 hours a year versus somebody who's just licensed and doing 6 hours a year. So I think that's important to kind of go above and beyond. Yeah, like we talked about before, it's more about value. It's more about providing your clients value and knowing what you're doing. And, there's 500, moving parts to a house. So we're generalists. We're not specialists, but we need to be good generalists, and we need to know a little bit about everything.
Right.
Yes.
So I know that your business is really booming, and you're expanding, and you've added a few home inspectors in your company. So, besides of course going through the credentials and whatnot, what are you looking for a home inspector? If somebody wants to be a home inspector, of course they're going to get licensed. But what's the personality traits that makes one become a good inspector? Probably one that they're willing to go through the crawl space, right?
Well, that's number one. Crawl spaces, attics, roofs. I mean, places you maybe really don't want to go but need to, because those are important parts of the inspection. But I think being a good communicator is really up there. In the top 2 or 3 for sure. You have to be able to convey what you find to buyers and agents, and you have to be able to get your message out to them. And so I think being a good communicator and being able to, educate your clients in that way and just pass along your findings, I think that's, again, one of the most important things for sure.
You probably have to be careful. I'm sorry. You probably have to be careful not to provide too much opinion as well, right? You got to be fair,
yes, because
it's not your decision to buy the home or not. You're just providing the facts to the buyer.
We're an objective third party, right? So and I have people ask me that for sure. Would you buy this house? And that's the $1 million question. And I don't answer that directly. Here's what we found, and you need to go through there and find out if you're okay with what it is, and then it's really up to you whether or not you're going to move forward.
That's really important.
Yes.
So adding back to that, like the communications, right? I think one of my pet peeves with like home inspectors is I hate the alarmist home inspector. And it's already an emotional transaction, right? The buyers are buying. This is not an investment property, although it is. But the buyers are buying a home, and they're very scared, especially first-time home buyers.
Sure.
So my sometimes issue when I've come with, other home inspectors that's not from the house doctor, I really get very annoyed with someone that I would call an alarmist, right? So explain that, what that is, Rick.
Well, again, it's all in the presentation. I will tell you that the House Doctors has a good bedside manner.
That's, I guess, the house doc. That's a good one. It's a good bedside manner, right?
I think disclosure is good for everybody, and we want to do our job. And I think that the realtors we work with want to sell a good house, or at least have their clients know what's going on. So I think disclosure is good, but I think it's a lot of it is in the way you present it.
Right. There might be a tagline there somewhere.
Yes, the house and bedside, yes.
Yeah.
Because truly, I mean, again, this is a little very sensitive to me because good parallelism because when my father was in the hospital and he passed away, but he was in a lot of pain, and the doctor came in, and actually it wasn't the doctor, it was actually the nurse, and the whole family's gathered by him, and we were very, very worried where this is going, and right away he goes, well, I just gotta let you know, before the sun comes up, he'll be dead, just like that. So I don't think that's good bedside manners, right?
Makes a bad situation worse.
Exactly. And so when a home inspector, like I love the fact that you say bedside manner because so there's mold in the house. How do you say that?
Well, we don't call it mold unless it's been tested and we can
That's
definitively
true.
and it's mold.
That's
so
true.
we say
that's a good one.
So
yes.
we say discoloration, mold-like
Yes.
substance, thing, and we're 90% sure that it's mold, but we can't. And same thing with asbestos or really a lot of other things. You really can't definitively say it is until
It's tested.
for 100%. So
Right.
most things that we find in inspections can be fixed. So if you don't have a GFI in the bathroom, it's not the end of the world. They're $18. Go out and get a GFI. I mean, it's
Right.
not a big deal. It's again, we don't want to downplay the importance, but again, it's in the way that you present it.
It's communication.
For sure.
And the reality is, it's providing the knowledge, the data behind it, so they can make an informed decision.
Yes.
And that's what your show is all about, and that's what this information is all about. It's helping a buyer who's making a major investment.
Yep.
Be aware of all the hidden expenses that go along with it.
So back to your story earlier, which you may want to remind the listeners, how did you communicate? I mean, of course, the GPS shows it, but, that means the driver was in trouble, right?
Yeah, so
how did that work
with our
out?
GPS tracking, it was a dash cam that caught an accident that had happened at this past week, last Saturday. And
At 4 a.m., it was
at
a 4:30
a.m., it was
car
a
pileup.
truck rear-ended 3 vehicles sitting at a stoplight at 42 miles an hour. And I communicated the information, just, again, providing the facts. So the owner called me, asked me to help him gather the video footage off the camera. I did that. I happened to be working at my church. We were cleaning our garden at that point. I stopped. I was able to download the video from my phone. I emailed him the 11-second video clip and allowed him to analyze it and make the decision how he was going to handle it. I just simply provided him the details. I didn't provide any commentary or editorial comments. It was, here's here are the details. Do with it what you please, because it's not my position to make an opinion. And it's just like Rick is
Very
not going to do
similar
the
to
same
you.
Same thing, yeah, very, very much so. So you just present the facts, and then you let the buyer, decide whether or not they're okay with.
Do you do anything
it.
with sewer cameras? Do you inspect sewer lines?
Not yet. It's something that we're thinking about doing, and it's something that's coming in the industry.
Sure.
So yes, it's something that we've discussed.
Because that would be another area where you just have to get the facts and figure out, what's going to cost to fix if there is a cost. And
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's awesome.
But you don't give out the cost, though, right? So that was the other thing, too. It's like that you try to kind of be not direct because, prices are all different, everywhere, right?
Yeah, prices are different. And when people start asking about, what it's going to cost to fix an electrical or plumbing problem, you don't know because you get into the thing and it looks like it's on the surface and it goes well below the surface and you tell them it's going to be $300 and it's $5,000, then it's a problem. So
Right.
we just tell them to bring in a licensed, qualified
Absolutely.
professional to look at it so that there's no guessing and that they know exactly what they're up against. Yeah.
So besides a good communicator, besides getting licensed, what else are you looking for if somebody wants to join your team as a home inspector, or if somebody wants to be a home inspector?
Again, we're looking for somebody who's willing to go above and beyond and do the education and get the certifications and be the best that we can be. Again, it's an important part of the process, and we're not rubber stamping anybody, and we just want to make sure that we're knowledgeable and we are providing good value and good advice to people.
So how much is that to be certified by ASHI? Is that ASHI?
Well, we're actually both. So we're ASHI and INTERNACHI. So we are certified by both in our company. Were you asking about pricing?
Yeah, pricing. Like how do people, how much is that? Like tests, so for
Certification
to be a
test.
realtor, it's about $700, something like that, just for the class.
They're both $450 a year for renewal, and then whatever the continuing education is.
I see.
Yes.
So if somebody wants to be a home inspector, they're going to go ahead and probably, go through the test. It's about $400 or $500.
Yep, licensing first, and then from
I
there.
see.
Yep.
These are all good information.
Absolutely.
And if you're missing it, where should they go?
So for podcast information and more, go to thegoodchildteam.com/good-to-know. That's thegoodchildteam.com/good-to-know. And just wanted to run through our sponsors real quick. There's Kasper Trivedi of
Trivedi and Kahn.
We got Brett Rickenow of Country Financial, Joe Agnello of Norman Agnello Associates, Mike Nielsen of Proper Rate, and
Yes,
Dave
and
Thompson of Home State Bank.
Correct.
And then myself, Michael Drellichars of Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions. So glad to be a sponsor and join the other sponsors, and look forward to speaking a little bit further in the next segment here.
Yes, well, we got more. We were going to go and talk to our house doctor here, Rick Carlberg, and we're going to talk about what people should be doing in the fall and the winter season coming up here so that they don't end up to be that house that's going to be nakakatakot.
Looking for a network of experts on what's happening in your town? You're in the right place. This is Good to Know with Liz Goodchild, your source for good advice.
So we're just throwing out a lot of good advice here, Rick. So welcome back. And Rick Carlberg is here from the House Doctor, and I am being supported by Mike Drellichars from Precise Fleet Tracking Solution. And
glad to be here.
Yes, and the friendships that I have with these two gentlemen is like unbelievable. They're like family. So, and when we're trying to give good advice, who do we turn to? Who do we invite? It's this gentleman that just provides us with really good information. And right now on our last segment, Rick, okay, so we talked about a lot of scary stories, with 2020 and 2021, which was, what we call the pandemic years, buyers are actually skipping inspections because, they were waiving inspections because they had to compete because there's multiple offers. So there was a stat out there that says 30% of the buyers were actually waiving inspections.
Foolishness.
Yeah, I read the same thing.
Yeah, and so why shouldn't they? Why is that scary?
Because there's things there that they don't know about. And like we talked about in one of the previous segments, is that you as a buyer walking through the house are going to be there for 15 or 20 minutes, and you're going to do your kind of cursory inspection. You're going to look at things and on the surface. We're going to be there 2.5 hours, and we're going to be in the attic and in the crawl space, and we're going to take the cover off the electric panel. We're going to operate the furnace. We're going to look up the chimney flue. I mean, we're going to do things that you are not going to do as a buyer, obviously, just due to time constraints, and you're not going to go crawling in somebody's attic. But that's the kind of stuff that we do. So even if you're buying a house as is, you got to know what as is. So
Exactly right.
yeah, and it might be more than you thought it was. So I mean, those are things that you should know as a buyer. And yeah, there was a lot of that going on. And hopefully, as things are normalizing, quote unquote, that people are going to get back into, doing the inspections. I always tell people our inspections break down to be, our fees are about 0.1% of what you're buying. And we feel like we can provide good value to you through the things that we find, the advice that we give, the maintenance tips, and so forth. So please, get an inspection.
So even if you're buying, let's just call it a $250,000 $250,000 property, and you're going to skip, what is it, 1/10 of the price, and same goes with attorneys. I mean, you need your team, you need, advice from these people. One of the things that people say to me, Liz, it's like it's rehab.
Oh goodness!
It's rehab totally. Why do we need to inspect? What do you say to that?
I say that we find problems in all houses. I don't care about age. I don't care about location, price. They all have problems. I just did And it's on the Facebook page, too, a $2 million home in the northern suburbs. And there's some pictures on the Facebook page that will get your attention. And then there was another house prior to that where it was about $1 million home, and the shower pan in the master bedroom wasn't installed properly, so it didn't drain after you used it. So you as a buyer walking through that house, you're probably not going to turn the shower on. You're not going to know that until you move in, take your first shower, and realize that you're standing in ankle-deep water.
Right.
Wow. And that's a $2 million house.
The
Wow.
second one was $1 million, but
Yeah.
yes.
So you can even have like a foundation crack where there's some major structural damage that a buyer may not notice or not realize how serious it could be.
Yes, and after you close, it's too late. So
Right.
you forego your inspection, you purchase the property, and you sign, and you're done, and you get the keys. It's too late. I mean, that after that, then you're on your own. So, really, I mean, it's so important. And again, newer homes, rehabbed homes, $2 million homes, it doesn't matter. I have yet to find the perfect home after 23 years, so
Wow.
it's not there.
Speaking of 23, my 23-year-old daughter actually purchased her first home, and who did I want to make sure covered the inspection? Rick Carlberg, the house doctor. You pretty much, this is like, I called him the fairy godfather. He wanted to make sure Kasha Trivedi was also the fairy godfather there, the attorney that took care of her as well. So for those people that are thinking about selling their home, though, homeowners, or even if they're not thinking of selling their homes, we don't want your house to turn into be one of those horror homes, scary homes. So what are the things you should tell our listeners to think about during the season, fall, winter, that they should check, keep in mind, things like that?
All right. Well, just a few things that I've done at my house as normal maintenance, prior to winter is I have a flat section of roof over my rear addition. So we got a lot of trees. So I go up there and I get the branches off and the leaves off so they're not up there all winter, trapping moisture underneath. Making sure the gutters are clean, disconnecting the hoses from the hose bibs so they don't freeze and break on you. So things like that, just, basic winter maintenance, just getting ready, because Chicago winters, we all know, can be pretty scary too. And so you got to get it done, prior to that cold weather getting here.
So if one has a fireplace, we had one scary picture in your website, this chimney looks like the towering Pisa.
Oh.
Is literally crooked like a chimney. So now we're gonna fire up our fireplaces. So what do we need? What was that about?
I call that my Jenga chimney, and I was on the roof of a 2-flat in the city, and literally the chimney's leaning. I mean, one more brick and the whole thing's coming down. Prior to using your fireplace in the wintertime, you should probably have it cleaned and checked. There's wood burners and there's gas inserts, so the gas inserts don't require probably as much maintenance, but still good to have them looked at, because there's a lot of chimney fires and you get creosote buildup in there, and it's always good to err on the side of caution, especially with the fireplace.
So what do we do though? Okay, so now we're changing weather, the furnace, and then before we look into our furnace, what do we do with our air conditioners? Because now we don't need to use them. Is there anything that we need to do before putting that away?
Getting back to that, one of the other things as far as the winter maintenance is having your furnace cleaned and checked prior to winter, right? So you want to do that to make sure that it's burning right. There's no carbon monoxide.
Absolutely
things
dangerous.
For $89, I mean, you can avoid a lot of safety issues and a lot of headaches later. So that's one, and then. So the furnace, and then you mentioned something else.
The air conditioner.
Yeah.
What do we do with that? Because now,
do
we cover it?
No, I don't. I mean, there's a few out there that do, but you really don't have to, because they're built to be outside. So it rains all year, so it's going to get wet. It's going to get just as cold with a cover. It doesn't matter. So, and I've heard people say that the cover just traps moisture inside. So it might be better not to have a cover.
That's good to know.
Yeah, they're built to be outside, so I don't think you need to cover them.
That's good to know.
My opinion.
So, is there anything else that people should think about, during the winter? Maybe also doing that radon inspection, because how often do we stay in the basement during wintertime?
Right, and the house is closed up. Typically, the windows aren't open, so you're not getting air exchange, and it's not getting aired out. So, yeah, that's a good point because you're spending obviously more time in the house. House is closed up more, so if you have higher radon levels, you probably want to know that. Yeah, and radon's fixable. If you have high radon levels, there's people who drive around all day doing mitigation systems, they work. If you have an active mitigation system with a fan, they work well. So. It's better to know than not to know, especially if you have a basement and you spend a lot of time down there.
Very
Okay.
good. That's awesome.
Wow.
Great information.
Well, thank you so much for giving us all this really good information. And if they need to reach you, and if they want to look at that scary pictures on your Facebook, where can they go see that?
Okay, so again, the phone number is 847-309-3000, 847-309-3000. The website is www.housedoctorsinc.com, which has some great photos, and there are also a lot of great photos on the House Doctors Facebook page.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
And so, before we end, again, shout out to our sponsors.
So sure, we have Kochum Trivedi of Trivedi & Kahn, attorneys at law, Brett Ricknaw of Country Financial, Joe Agnello of Nominee Agnello and Associates, Mike Nilsson, Proper Rate, and Dave Thompson from Home State Bank, and myself, Michael Drello, Charles of Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions. But we're finishing up our show here. If you missed our show altogether, you can catch us again at 5 p.m. We re-air, and then the podcast will be up on the website. Go to thegoodchildteam.com/good-to-know for all the past podcasts, more information, more details on our sponsors, etc.
And if you guys want to join, just like Rick, call Dave Steiner because we can get you in and give good information. But as always, magandang Sabado.